The US political landscape is rarely calm, but things took a particularly dramatic turn with President Trump at the helm. Known for his unconventional style and bold pronouncements, Trump wasted no time in shaking up the status quo in Washington. From trade deals to immigration policies, his presidency was marked by a series of headline-grabbing moves. Two of the most impactful of these moves were the removal of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and the implementation of a federal hiring freeze. These decisions sent shockwaves through the nation, igniting fierce debates about their potential consequences. The removal of DEI programs and the federal hiring freeze tapped into existing fault lines within American society. Trump's presidency, from its outset, was marked by a profound sense of polarization. His rhetoric and policies often appealed to his base while alienating those with opposing viewpoints. This division was evident in the reactions to his decisions on DEI and federal hiring. Supporters saw these actions as a necessary step towards dismantling what they perceived as reverse discrimination and bloated bureaucracy. They argued that DEI programs unfairly favored certain groups while hindering merit-based advancement. Similarly, they viewed the hiring freeze as a crucial measure to curb government spending and streamline operations. On the other hand, critics viewed these moves as discriminatory and harmful, particularly to minority groups and those seeking employment opportunities within the federal government. Diversity, equity, and inclusion programs became increasingly prevalent in workplaces across the United States, particularly within government agencies. These programs aim to foster more inclusive environments and address historical inequalities in hiring and promotion practices. However, they also became a lightning rod for criticism, with some arguing that they went too far in promoting certain groups at the expense of others. Trump's decision to eliminate DEI programs from the federal government was met with both praise and condemnation. Supporters argued that these programs created unnecessary divisions and fostered resentment among employees. They claimed that DEI initiatives often led to qualified individuals being overlooked for positions based on their race or gender rather than their merit. This, they argued, created an uneven playing field and undermined the principles of fairness and equal opportunity. At the heart of the debate over DEI programs was a fundamental question: what constitutes fairness in hiring and promotion practices? Proponents of DEI argued that simply treating everyone the same was not enough to address historical and systemic disadvantages faced by certain groups. They argued that proactive measures, such as targeted recruitment efforts and mentorship programs, were necessary to level the playing field. Opponents, however, argued that these measures amounted to reverse discrimination. They believed that hiring and promotion decisions should be based solely on merit, regardless of an individual's race, gender, or other protected characteristics. Trump's decision to eliminate DEI programs reflected this perspective, signaling a shift towards a more colorblind approach to employment within the federal government. And beyond the social and ideological arguments surrounding DEI programs, there was also an economic dimension to the debate. Trump and his supporters argued that these programs were costly and inefficient, diverting resources away from core government functions. They argued that the money spent on DEI training and initiatives could be better used elsewhere, such as on infrastructure projects or tax cuts. Moreover, they contended that a more streamlined and efficient federal workforce would ultimately benefit the economy as a whole. By reducing bureaucracy and eliminating unnecessary programs, they believed that businesses would face fewer regulations and lower costs, leading to increased investment and job creation. This focus on economic efficiency and reducing the size and scope of government was a recurring theme throughout Trump's presidency. In a move that sent ripples of uncertainty across the nation, President Trump announced a federal hiring freeze, effectively halting the recruitment of new employees for most government positions. This decision, coming on the heels of the controversial removal of DEI programs, further fueled the already heated debate surrounding his approach to governance. Supporters hailed it as a decisive step towards fiscal responsibility, while critics slammed it as short-sighted and potentially damaging to the effective functioning of the government. The freeze, which applied to nearly all civilian federal agencies, exempted positions related to national security and public safety. It immediately put a halt to the filling of thousands of vacant positions across various departments and agencies, leaving many wondering about the long-term implications for government services and the economy as a whole. The Trump administration justified the hiring freeze as a necessary measure to curb government spending and reduce the size of the federal workforce. They argued that years of unchecked growth had led to bloated bureaucracy, inefficiencies, and a drain on taxpayer dollars. By implementing a hiring freeze, they aimed to reduce the federal payroll, eliminate unnecessary positions, and ultimately create a more efficient and effective government. Proponents of the freeze pointed to historical precedents, arguing that similar measures had been implemented by previous administrations, both Democratic and Republican, to address budget concerns and streamline government operations. They argued that a temporary pause on hiring would provide an opportunity to reassess staffing needs, eliminate redundancies, and modernize government functions for the 21st century. Section 3, Implications and Concerns, a future uncertain for federal workforce. However, critics of the hiring freeze argued that it would have far-reaching and potentially damaging consequences. They warned that it would lead to staffing shortages, increased workloads for existing employees, and a decline in the quality and timeliness of government services. Concerns were particularly high in agencies responsible for essential services such as healthcare, social security, and environmental protection, where existing vacancies already posed challenges. Opponents also argued that the freeze would disproportionately impact younger workers and those from minority groups who are underrepresented in the federal workforce. They pointed out that a freeze would limit opportunities for new talent to enter government service, potentially exacerbating existing diversity challenges and hindering innovation. The long-term implications of the hiring freeze on the composition and effectiveness of the federal workforce remained a subject of much debate and speculation. Section 1. Prosperity or peril. The removal of DEI programs and the federal hiring freeze sent shockwaves through the American economy. Supporters of Trump's bold moves argued that these actions would unleash unprecedented economic growth, while critics feared they would lead to recession and hardship. The truth, as is often the case, lay somewhere in between these two extremes. The immediate impact of these policies was a subject of much debate. Some economic indicators, such as the stock market, initially surged in response to the news, suggesting a vote of confidence from investors. However, other indicators, such as consumer confidence and job growth, painted a more mixed picture. The long-term consequences of these policies, however, remained uncertain, with experts offering a range of predictions from rosy to dire. Section 2. A shrinking government, a growing economy. The Trump administration argued that its policies would ultimately lead to a stronger and more dynamic economy. By reducing the size and scope of government, they aimed to free up resources for the private sector to flourish. Tax cuts for businesses and individuals, coupled with deregulation, were intended to spur investment, create jobs, and boost economic growth. This approach, often referred to as supply-side economics or trickle-down economics, was based on the belief that benefits to businesses and wealthy individuals would eventually trickle down to the rest of the population in the form of higher wages and increased employment opportunities. However, critics argued that this approach had historically benefited the wealthy at the expense of the poor and middle class, leading to greater income inequality and social unrest. While the Trump administration touted the potential economic benefits of its policies, critics pointed to the human cost of austerity measures. The federal hiring freeze, for example, led to job losses and hiring freezes across various government agencies, leaving many families struggling to make ends meet. Moreover, cuts to social programs and services disproportionately impacted vulnerable populations, such as low-income families, seniors, and people with disabilities. The removal of DEI programs also raised concerns about fairness and equality in the workplace. Critics argued that these programs were essential for addressing systemic barriers faced by women and minorities, and that their elimination would exacerbate existing inequalities. Moreover, they argued that a less diverse and inclusive workforce would stifle innovation and creativity, ultimately harming the economy in the long run. As the debate over the economic impact of Trump's policies raged on, the American people watched and waited, their hopes and fears intertwined. Would these bold moves usher in an era of unprecedented prosperity as promised by the administration? Or would they lead to economic turmoil and social unrest? Only time would tell. One thing was certain. Trump's presidency had ignited a national conversation about the role of government in the economy, the meaning of fairness and equality, and the path to achieving the American dream. These were not just abstract policy debates. They were issues that touched the lives of every American, shaping their present realities and their hopes for the future. President Trump, a businessman by trade, approached the political landscape with a deal-maker's mentality. His decisions regarding DEI programs and the federal hiring freeze were no exception. He believed in shaking up the status quo, challenging conventional wisdom, and negotiating from a position of strength. In his view, these policies were not just about cutting costs or streamlining government, but about fundamentally reshaping the relationship between the government and its people. He envisioned a leaner, more efficient government that empowered individuals and businesses to thrive, free from the shackles of bureaucracy and excessive regulation. Trump's vision was bold, ambitious, and not without its critics. His supporters praised his willingness to challenge the status quo and fight for what he believed in, while his detractors accused him of recklessness, short-sightedness, and a lack of understanding of the complexities of governance. Central to Trump's vision was a revitalized American dream. He believed that by reducing government and unleashing the free market, anyone could achieve success through hard work. This message resonated with many Americans, especially those feeling left behind. Critics argued that Trump's policies mainly benefited the wealthy and corporations. Trump's bold moves generated a mix of hope and fear across the nation. His supporters saw economic revitalization and traditional values, while critics feared social and economic divisions. The nation found itself at a crossroads, divided by differing visions of the future. The stakes were high and the consequences far-reaching. President Trump's decisions to eliminate DEI programs and implement a federal hiring freeze left an indelible mark on the American landscape. These actions sparked widespread debate, ignited passions on both sides of the political spectrum, and forced the nation to confront fundamental questions about its values and vision for the future. The legacy of these bold moves continues to be debated and analyzed. In the years since President Trump left office, the United States has found itself navigating uncharted waters. The COVID-19 pandemic, the rise of social and political polarization, and the increasing urgency of addressing climate change have created a perfect storm of challenges, testing the resilience of American institutions and the very fabric of American society. The path forward will require open dialogue, empathy, and a willingness to find common ground, despite deep-seated differences. It will demand leadership that prioritizes the common good over partisan interests. In a democracy, the future rests with every citizen. Engagement, making one's voice heard and holding officials accountable, creates positive change. Stay informed, engage in dialogue, and participate in the political process. Support organizations, advocate for policies, and hold officials accountable. Embrace engagement to ensure progress and a thriving democracy.